Hello everybody and welcome to DADGAD Universe here in Sedona, Arizona. And the purpose of this video here that I'm making this evening is to show you my journey into DADGAD and my approach, which I find a little different than the more orthodox approaches that I've seen around. And I'd like to demonstrate it for you. First of all, we all know that there's nothing more beautiful than the sound of the open strings in DADGAD, and we all love to, get into that universe. We can all, just get into this thing and do this forever. But I found for myself that then, when I'm playing live, a lot of people might come up to me and go, "That's beautiful, here's $50, play Misty, because it's my wife and my 50th anniversary." So I'm doing this, and I found that I didn't want to have to, move a capo around or take a capo off or have to retune. I wanted the fretboard, I just wanted to go deep into DADGAD, and I wanted to not have to retune and do all that kind of stuff. So, for example, say I'm doing something like, I'm into a zone, people really like it, and then they say, "That's great, can you play Missy for me?" So what I wanted to be able to do is go, without having to retune or having to do anything, and that's an E flat. So that's my whole approach. So to do that, I started with all, the stuff in D and all that, and all those kind of, with all the open strings and everything, and there went from, into, key of G, like G minor. And it's all really beautiful in C minor. E. So I learned all the chords, but still, as you're probably realizing, there's still the sound of a lot of those open strings. So even if I'm doing something in G, like. A lot of the DADGAD open strings. So what a lot of people do is move a capo around, but still with the capo moved around, it's still the relationship of the same strings. So then they would get into maybe retuning every tune, but I don't think the guitar really likes to be retuned all the time. The neck is going like that. It breaks a lot of strings if your saddle here is too sharp. And also, it's really hard to get a guitar ever really in tune. I think a guitar wants to be in a regular tuning and just stay there, like a Stradivarius violin. And just, so then the guitar stays in that one tuning, and as you play it over the years, all the molecules, in the wood, it all resonates that. And I found that it actually wants to go back into that tune. So if you go into an air-conditioned place or you're in a humid environment, and it starts going a little out, it wants to go back into tune. So I really enjoyed that idea of going deep into one tuning. And I like it, because it's like a chessboard. You utilize the whole chessboard, and instead of little fragments, like little sections, because as soon as it's capoed off, you're really only able to use a little section. Like say you have it capoed up here at the 6th fret, you're really utilizing only this little area here. And it's a beautiful area, it's a beautiful universe to be in, but why not just use your finger to get those, those really magical DADGAD, we can get all those, but then all of a sudden, we're in the key of F sharp. So I'm talking about moving out of modal conceptuality into a chromatic 12th tone sense. So my goal has always been, utilize the DADGAD thing, play all that beautiful stuff, but to be able to be more like a jazz musician and improvise, harmonically on a 12th tone level chromatically. And so that's what I've tried to do. So, we're playing... beautiful, it just sounds... We use all the harmonics. They sound so great. Even, But then all of a sudden, why not go into something like from Thad Jones, like a jazz tune in B flat? That's in B flat. Because it's beautiful playing the open strings, and everybody knows, that the best sound of the guitar is the open strings, but you're going to put yourself to sleep and everybody else around you if you just keep playing tune after tune, in that kind of, tonality, sonic, in that sonic space. So I found that, to move away from it and then use some of the open strings, but then go into a crazy key like F. Like say you're doing something like very idiomatic of DADGAD, But then all of a sudden, without having to move a capo or without having to tune or without having to do anything, you're all of a sudden in your key of F. So that's my approach, and I've never really seen anybody doing that. I think, there's wonderful players in DADGAD, and they do wonderful things, and most of them are a lot better than me, but I've never really seen anybody approach it like a jazz guitar, really, so much with the closed fingerings. And a big part, so what you have to do, a big part of it is you have to learn to mute a lot with your right hand and your left hand. Because obviously, if you have if you're playing like D major here, like, you can use the open strings to help reinforce the D major, but what if you want to play E flat major? Sounds pretty cool, but that's only because you're pedaling on the D right there. So let's say, another key, like B natural. It doesn't work. So what you got to do, you play this, and then all of a sudden, if you're going to do something like that, you got to learn to just play those strings in the chord and mute out those others. So you develop this control with left hand and right hand muting, and we'll talk about that in subsequent videos to come. That's an important technique that we need to utilize. So we've talked about the capo. We get rid of the capo. The first thing that inspired me to get rid of the capo was, I was playing one night in this place, and this old geezer comes in with his wife and says, look, Myrtle, he's got one of those contraptions like I got. Hell, anybody can play with one of those things. All you need to know is G, C, and D, and just move it around. And I just went, wow. And then it happened again about 5 years later, and I thought, okay, that's it. That's God talking to me and telling me. So out with the capo. Another thing, the tuning. I just found, retuning and everything. You just never. I actually got deep into the fingerboard because I was too lazy to retune all the time. I found it was easier to just learn the whole fretboard and learn all these chords and learn to play like, approach like the Joe Pass or something. I found that easier than just tuning all the time because it's just never, the string breaks, and everything. So threw away the tuning. Stay into deep one tuning. Almost, I approach it like it's like standard tuning. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the tuner. I have a little guitar tuner back here, And sometimes, when you're playing, and, it's great if you're in a concert situation and you can hear a pin drop, you can tune, and it's beautiful. But sometimes if people are talking or there's some kind of ambient noise or something, sometimes it's really just hard to tune. So I prefer the Planet Waves tuner. It's very small. It's back here. You can't see it, so it just looks like I'm in a very pensive mood, and I'm kind of tuning, but actually I've got a little tuner back here, but it's not like all the other tuners that kind of hang up, and you can see them, because I've had other old geezers walk in that, go, hey, Agnes, look at that, he's got one of those contraptions like I have, and hell, anybody can tune their guitar with one of those things, let's get out of here, this guy, he's, so, but I found this, and nobody really, can see it, so I haven't had anybody come in like that, lately. There is this one little thing here, and so if they ask what that is, just tell them it's one of those things that, heavy metal guys used to put on the headstock of their Les Pauls in the 80s, so it would be heavier, more resonance, whatever. Okay, so we've done all that. Another thing I'd like to talk about is real fast, left hand, thumb underneath the neck. Not really into this kind of thing, and it's kind of cool because, you can kind of fret the, but then these fingers are down here and you can't really utilize your pinky. So I find that, for me, just for me personally, you have the thumb underneath and strings, fingers right over the strings. As far as the right hand, another thing, I used to use finger picks. I had a thumb pick and I had finger picks. And, there's nothing more brilliant and loud than, the sound of finger picks is just great, especially if you're doing, like, finger picking, The only problem I found was with the finger picks is, it's a singular sound. You can't coax and woo a lot of other sounds out. Like, here's an example. Like, see, you're playing like this. Without the thumb pick, you can go. So you can utilize the flesh of your thumb. And so you can't do that with a thumb pick. So it's a great sound, and it's really loud, and it's awesome, but I found it to be, just for me, because a lot of the greatest players, use finger picks and stuff, but I just found for me that there was just a lot more dynamics with flesh. So I do use the acrylic nails. I go to the Vietnam nail place around the corner from my house and find it very fascinating. Never met so many young girls looking for a husband, actually. They all want to learn how to play the guitar. It's incredible, But you also get to hear stories about, war-torn Cambodia and Da Nang and, the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. It's quite an educational experience. You feel like you're in another world. So I get the acrylic nails. And with those, you get a good sound, but it's still the natural. It's still fingers on strings. I felt that the finger picks were almost like a prosthesis or something, or a prophylactic, or a appendage, something kind of stopping the direct connection from the fingers to the string, kind of like grounding, like the way you take your shoes off and run around in the dirt, So I like the direct connection. So that's kind of my approach, with that. And then another reason I threw away the thumb pick and everything, because I like there's one technique I really like, with just the thumb. It's kind of an oud technique, and actually what it really is, it's like just your thumb, and it's almost like a Wes Montgomery kind of thing. You put your hand over here like this, and But it's also, you can get an oud sound, and it's actually, legitimately, it's a flamenco technique, and it's actually, I believe it's called Yasapua. And so you go, and you have to be able to double thumb it. With thumb pick, everything would have to be a downstroke, because you can't, it's very hard to come up and down with a thumb pick. It's almost impossible. So, without the thumb pick, you can, So that's the direct. So one of my things on my bucket list is to take fabulous, fantastic Muslim music from around the world performed on the oud, and make a CD and call it "I'm in the Oud for Love." But that's maybe, if not this lifetime, maybe the next lifetime. Okay, so I think we've covered pretty much the basics. What kind of strings do I use? I don't really like elixir strings, but I use them. And the reason I use them is because, first of all, I don't really like them because there's something about them that seems a little synthetic to me. And, nothing like a great, like a D'Addario or a Martin string, and you're sitting around the campfire, and you're just, strumming, you got all your friends and everything. These aren't that good for that. But somehow I really like them because they seem to be really good with a marriage with electronics and technology. You run them through like a really great little acoustic guitar amplifier, a little bit of delay, a touch of reverb, and they just seem to have they work, Usually you can woo a lot of textures out of them and a lot of dynamics, and so I use them. What can I say? And they last a long time, but don't be deceived, because people will tell you, oh, these last so long. And they do last a long time, but actually to the perceptive ear, they sound bright and they sound really, like these are really old, and they sound really bright and everything, but actually what's really happening up here on the high end is the harmonics start going down the toilet after about a couple of weeks. The juxtaposition against fretted strings and open string. So that kind of stuff. So if I was in the big time, I'd have somebody working for me, changing my strings every day for me. I'd have some guy on retainer, I'd pay him by the year. When I'm making $1,000 a day, I'd give him $100 a day. So those are strings, and I think that's about it. So to do all these chords we're talking about, just takes a little tiny bit of music theory, which you have to learn. And we're not going to go into it here because there's tons and tons of books on music theory, and you can figure it out yourself and get a book. But it's just basic theory 101 to build these chords. Basically, all you have to do is you have the major scale. So you build a chord. That's what I did. That's why I developed these. These chords weren't in any book, So you to build a chord, you learn in theory that you have to have a root, a 1, a third, a fifth, an octave, and then if you want to, go to higher altered chords, a 9th, an 11th, et cetera, et cetera. So I just build my own chords, There's a C, C major. Got out of D immediately, I just forget D, and we start getting to like C. So you have a C7. So the beauty about DADGAD is the middle is kind of the same as standard tuning. I mean, like this would be, standard tuning would be E, A, D, G, B, E, So in DADGAD is D, A, D, G, A, D. So the middle is kind of the same. So say you take a C7th, and then if you utilize the techniques I talked to you about with the right hand and the left hand about muting the outside strings, you can play that all the way up. So I kind of developed them like that, or there's an augmented, and diminished. And I just built the chords myself, and took a little while to move around fast on them, and everything. But you build them. Like you take an A major, here's A major. And then through your own study of theory, you'll learn that, to make an A minor, you flat the third. See? So, once you know that, F major, F sharp major. So the way I approach it, instead of, and here's the good news about having to spend all this time learning all these new chords. The good news is that you're not going to get tendonitis so bad always fretting all these chords like you see, people playing these kind of chords in standard tuning. It's not going to happen, because what I did was I developed, like, see, you take A major, play it up here in the treble area, and then I have an A major for the bass. So if I'm playing with a bass player or something, I might hang out more on, the higher register, like you got a bass player. So I'll play these things to stay out of his way, and then if I'm playing with a flute player, and I'm trying to hold down the bottom, then I'd hang out more on the bass side of the chords. So I have versions of each chord in a bass area and a treble area. So that's kind of cool. And then when you get into the extensions, you take, like, maybe, let's move out of A, we'll move into G. Say G major 7th. Now that's pretty schmaltzy for me. I mean, that's a real straight ahead, standard G major 7th sound, But to me it sounds too much like the band Chicago, I was walking down the street it's just too schmaltzy for me, So I even though I know them all and I can play them all, I don't play that kind of stuff. It's kind of not cool enough for me. So if I'm going to, like, look at a chart or something and I see A major 7th, I would play more like that kind of thing. So I have my own, and that's just a major 7. If you say you take a A minor 7 flat 5 to a D7, G minor 7 flat 5, C, and that's what you just learn how to do these. You just practice 2 5-1s, all the way down the fretboard chromatically. And I just recommend you get a real book, the fake book, it's called the real book. And I just taught myself to read through all those tunes and, play the head. The heads are really easy to read. And play the chords. And then try to play the head and the chords, like, here's that rainy day. And you try to find the melody in there, and it's great for warding off dementia, Alzheimer's, all that kind of stuff, because you've really got your brain really working, because you're looking at a piece of music, so you're activating that part of your brain, and then you're playing all this weird stuff that's not standard tuning that you didn't, learn in Mr. Drucker's guitar class, when you were in the 5th grade, Tom Dooley and all that. You're doing all this, so it's just sparking neuroconnectors and everything, and having a lot of fun at the same time. And then you throw that melody into it too, and believe me, it's all there. Every melody, in the real, it's all within the chords of DADGAD in the inversions. It's all there. So yeah, we have that, and then okay, we'll probably wind up this video here pretty soon. One other thing I'd like to touch upon before we end here is then you have the single note improvisation. So you've learned all the chords, and like. Now, one good news about DADGAD is octaves. They're really easy because they're parallel. Instead of standard tuning where you have to do this kind of stuff, and Wes Montgomery said he used to get migraines, playing octaves. They're really easy in DADGAD because they're just... So you can do that. If you notice my right hand, One technique I have, I'm muting here with the palm of my hand, and that's really good because you have all those open DADGAD strings, you know, so they're all constantly wanting to ring. So this is a really great technique, you know, to keep them muted, so you're not, so it's not just like all these overtoned strings. You know, you're kind of keeping control. So you got, and then also it's a good friend of delay because I have a little delay here on the amp. So when it's muted and you approach it staccato, you get a nice little kickback from the delay. Okay, so you got the octaves, so those are really easy. And you can approach it like that, or you can, that's my middle finger doing that. And but then there's the West Montgomery way, you know. It's with the thumb, kind of like that thumb technique we went over earlier. So you have all that, and then now for the single strings, I have several approaches. One approach, I don't like to use a pick, you know, like a flat pick. I always found that they get really slippery, and I drop them, you know, and it's like in the dark, you know, and you can't find them and everything. So I use this nail on my index finger like a pick, and it's not going anywhere. It's not flying away or nothing, and it's probably not going to break either because it's acrylic, you know. And I like the approach of, again, the palm on the thumb, the palm on the bridge over the saddle, and then picking it kind of. So it's kind of it's a muted sound. It's kind of a little like that Al Di Meola kind of thing. You got a little delay happening on the amp, so you got to. That's my first finger. That's my index finger. Just kind of a cool technique, and it's all there. So if you're rested on the palm there, you can just do that and go back and forth. It's really cool. You can kind of get a little tremolos happening. It's really fun, and so that works really good. Another, and again, it's that basic theory. You just basically, for me, you basically learn this, you know, like in C, the C major scale, and then C Phrygian. I mean Dorian. Dorian comes after Ionian. So Dorian, C Dorian, and C Phrygian. And then what is after that? Lydian. You sharp the 4. That's that Lydian sound. Then Mixolydian, kind of a dominant 7th. And then Aeolian. I think that is it's kind of like the Dorian. And if you just know those modes, that's all you need to know to play lead. You know, so you can just, you know, like. That's D Dorian. Phrygian. And then throw in the pentatonic. You can't go wrong with a pentatonic. With some slurs and ornamentations and stuff like that, and you're good to go. So you do that, and then I have some other techniques too with the right hand also. I find that, like, if it's blues or something, you know, it's cool, like if you know, like say A dominant 7 to D7. That's cool like that, but I find it's kind of, I like that more where you just kind of grab it like you channel your inner Delta blues guy kind of thing, you know. You kind of pick, you know, it's like the guys from Africa, finger style guitar play. A lot of those guys just play with one finger and a thumb, and I don't know, you get more of a gritty sound than the pick thing, you know. kind of come down around with your thumb. So I like that. And then if you want to get a little more, excuse me one sec. Notice that one thing with steel string guitars, the E string, which is actually the D string in DADGAD, it seems to always creep up and go about a cent sharp all the time. You got to keep an eye on it. There it is. I kind of like the thumb and the middle finger. So if you need a little more speed, you got the thumb in that, and that's pretty much, I'm sure there's a million other things too, but I didn't make any notes or anything, and I don't have any scorecard, so I'm sure there's a million things I'm forgetting, but I think for now, that should keep you really busy for the next 10 to 20 years, I would say. Just all those things that we went over in this last time. So signing off here from DADGAD Universe, and I want to thank everybody for checking in and checking out my video. And we'll meet you up in, if not this life, the next life. See you later.